Hello, and welcome to the When Depression is in Your Bed podcast. I've spent years saying something, and I imagine it's something you may have said yourself. I'm doing my best. I've said it to myself, I've definitely said it to Ben many, many times, and I've genuinely believed it. As a matter of fact, I still believe it. But lately I've been realizing something that has been changing how I understand those words. Not only is my best not fixed, which I've always been aware of, but my best changes as my capacity expands, and I can intentionally influence the conditions that help my capacity expand. In other words, I can help my best become better, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. I'm your host, Trish Sanders. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, MAGO certified relationship therapist, relationship coach, and the creator of The Road to Reconnection, and I am delighted that you are here. Let's get started. Pretty much over the entire course of my personal and professional life, I have often said that I truly believe that everyone is doing their best. And this is something that I have sometimes gotten pushback on from people both in the office and in my personal life. People often say something like, "Really? Are you sure? Have you looked around lately? Look at people, look at me, look at my relationships, look at the state of declining mental health, look at our world. How could everyone possibly be doing their best?" And I understand that question. I truly do. And I totally respect that everyone gets to have their own perspective. And through the lens I look through, I still believe it's true. And the more that I've learned about nervous system functioning, the more I become convinced that in most moments, people are genuinely doing the best they can with what they have available to them. Now, that certainly doesn't mean that everyone's best looks the same, and it absolutely does not mean that we don't have responsibility for our actions. It simply means that what is genuinely available to us in any moment is connected to the amount of capacity that we have available in that moment. And that's related to our nervous system functioning. For years, I have understood that if I was feeling sick or overwhelmed or excessively stressed, that my best that day would certainly not look the same as on a day when I felt well rested or grounded or things seemed to be going well in my life. That made sense to me, and honestly, I could usually have compassion for myself and others. If someone was grieving or sick or super overwhelmed, I wouldn't expect their same level of functioning to show up in that particular moment. And that compassion and understanding certainly extended to Ben in some of his hardest moments. When he was in his deepest depression or his most active anxiety, I certainly wasn't expecting the bar for his best to be very high. And I was often okay with that. And at times, I was able to often extend that same level of compassion and understanding to myself. However, it got more challenging when my best or Ben's best stayed at that relatively low level for extended periods of time. And what I didn't quite understand and what I couldn't quite figure out was how someone's best becomes consistently better, or how someone can intentionally support their best getting better and better over time. For me, it just seemed like either I woke up having a good day or Ben seemed to be in a good mood, and in those days, our best was better. And I certainly felt grateful for those moments, but it wasn't very empowering not understanding how we got there. I really wanted to understand how people could gradually become more capable over time. And I really wondered if it would always seem like such a tremendous effort to do some of the things that a lot of other people seem to do with relative ease. And I truly wondered if my best was ever going to get better in a consistent way. And the more I've learned about the nervous system, the more I think so much of what we label as mental health challenges or relationship struggles or self-esteem issues can often be understood through the lens of capacity. When our nervous system shifts into self-protection, our capacity narrows. Sometimes that means things like taking a shower or brushing your teeth, doing the laundry or the dishes, sending an email can feel incredibly difficult. And when we're experiencing that kind of narrowed capacity, it shows up in our relationships as well. We become more reactive, maybe more controlling, more avoidant or withdrawn. We might overfunction, we might underfunction, we might stay extra busy, or we might fall into collapse. Not because we're bad people and not because something's wrong with us, but because our nervous system is trying to protect us. And when I myself have been in that place of narrowed capacity, it often comes with a lot of negative self-talk. I think to myself that I should be able to do it. I question, why can't I just do the simple thing? I question, what is wrong with me? And why can't I just try harder to get it done? And in those kinds of moments, it totally makes sense why I went into that self-attacking place. But I've also realized something. Self-attack pretty much never expands our capacity. In fact, it usually does the opposite, because it's often experienced as a cue of danger and our nervous system feels like it needs to protect itself. And then we enter this very familiar loop. Narrowed capacity leads to self-attack. Self-attack creates the need for more self-protection, and self-protection usually narrows capacity even more. And before long, it can feel like change is not even possible. And for years, that's the loop I lived in so much of the time. And I did truly believe that I was doing my best. I just didn't know how to help my best to become better. And I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to do just that. And there's a lot of wonderful information on this out there in the area of habit development and goal formation. Things like getting 1% better every day. And intellectually, I read it and it totally made sense to me. The problem wasn't that I didn't understand or agree with the concept. The problem was that I did not know what to do to help myself get 1% better every day. There were some days when I was doing things that supported that and I felt like I was on a roll. And then there were usually a lot of other days where I wasn't coming even close and I felt like I wasn't moving in the direction that I wanted to at all. So even though there were some times I ended up feeling like I was making progress, I ended up spending a lot more time feeling defeated. And what polyvagal theory and understanding the nervous system gave me was not just another strategy. It gave me a completely different starting point. Instead of asking, how do I force myself to be better? Or what's the next best skill that I need to learn? I started asking very different questions. What does my nervous system need? How do I become more attuned to myself? How can I respond to myself in different ways that would actually be more helpful? How can I notice and receive more cues of safety that support nervous system regulation? And what conditions could I influence that could help reduce some of the cues of danger? And when I started asking myself those kinds of questions, I started discovering something. I wasn't trying to become a better version of myself. I was learning how to intentionally create the conditions where more of myself could become available. And those are two very different things, and I think they come from different places in our nervous system. Striving to be the absolute best version of yourself is often coming from a sympathetically charged nervous system, whereas being responsive to your nervous system and allowing your capacity to gradually expand so that you can access more parts of yourself is much more grounded in a ventral state in our nervous system where we can feel safe enough to become more of ourselves. My journey was not perfect and it was not linear, but it was consistent enough. And that experience of expanded capacity has, in time, become even more familiar than my old familiar experience of narrowed capacity. And over time, my best naturally became better, not because I tried harder, but because more genuinely became available to me as my safety increased and my capacity expanded. A really good way to illustrate what I'm talking about right now is to talk about my garage. If you opened up my garage door and you looked inside right now, you might reasonably ask, Trish, is this really the best that you can do? And in this moment, I honestly would say, yeah, it is. It is so cluttered, and there are piles of things that need to be donated and things that need to be sold, and there's things like boxes of old photographs that still need to be organized and categorized and find a permanent home. And years ago, when I looked at that garage, that would have confirmed old stories about myself. I'm a mess, I'm inconsistent, I'm a total and complete failure. But today, I look at that garage very differently. I no longer see it as evidence that I'm incapable. I see it as evidence that my capacity just hasn't quite expanded to that point yet. And I can believe that about my garage because I have evidence in other places in my life. Evidence that over the last several years, I've become more physically healthy, more emotionally healthy. I've become better to my husband, better to my kids, and better to myself. Not because I became a different person, but because more of me became available. I've shown up consistently for this podcast for over a year and a half, and I've been steadily and consistently working on my coaching program and the theory behind all of it for months now. And sustaining those kinds of things would have felt impossible to me years ago. So now when I look at my garage, I don't feel shame anymore. I feel trust. Trust that my capacity has expanded before and trust that it will continue to expand again. And that's not wishful thinking. That's evidence based on my own life, what I've intentionally done and already created. The more I've reflected on this, the more I realize that one of the things that understanding the nervous system has given me, one of the absolute greatest gifts, has been that of hope. Because I've always believed that I'm doing my best. I believed it 20 years ago, and I believe it today. The difference is I now know that I can intentionally influence my best. And I no longer have to just simply hope that I wake up with more capacity tomorrow than I have today. And I know that I can intentionally create conditions where even more of that expanded capacity becomes possible. Not all at once, but gradually and in time. I know that I can build greater understanding and awareness and compassion. And little by little, my capacity expands. And as my capacity expands, my best expands too. Now, this doesn't mean that there won't be days where I still feel overwhelmed or tired or need a break. And it doesn't mean that I'll never feel discouraged or disappointed again. Capacity will always fluctuate. That's just a part of being human. But I also know something today that I didn't know all those years ago. Capacity doesn't only just fluctuate, capacity also expands. And I can participate in that process. Not perfectly, and I can't control it in every single moment, but I can and have done wonders by working with my nervous system instead of against it. So today when I say I'm doing my best, I still mean it, but it's not the same thing that it used to be. It's not just how I understand how I was stringing together so many days of narrowed capacity, even though I was trying so very hard to do better. Today, it is filled with hope and possibility. It is an invitation to keep finding more ways to intentionally influence the conditions that allow more and more to become genuinely available. Because my best isn't fixed, and it's not totally out of my control. My best can continue becoming better. One moment of understanding and self-compassion, one moment of self-care, one moment of noticing a cue of safety, one moment of being able to respond differently to a cue of danger so I can take better care of myself. Each little piece of new evidence at a time, I watch my capacity expand and my best become consistently better. And I think there's something incredibly hopeful about that. And I hope there's something in today's conversation that feels hopeful for you too. As our time comes to a close, I ask you to keep listening for just a few more moments because I want to thank you for showing up today, and I want to leave you with an invitation as you hit stop and move back out into the world on your own unique wellness journey. In order to move from where you are today to the place where you want to be, the path may seem long or unclear or unknown, and I want you to know that if that seems scary or daunting or downright terrifying or anything else, that is totally okay. Know that you do not have to create the whole way all at once. We don't travel a whole journey in one stride, and that is why my invitation to you today is to take a step, just one. Any type, any size, in any direction. It can be an external step that can be observed or measured, or it could be a step you visualize taking in your mind. It can be a step towards action or towards rest or connection or self-care or whatever step makes sense to you. I invite you to take a step today because getting to a place that feels better, more joyful, more connected than the place where you are today is possible for everyone, including you, and even when depression is in your bed. If today's episode resonated with you, please subscribe so you can be notified when each weekly episode gets released. I encourage you to leave a review and reach out to me on social media at trish.sanders.lcsw. Your feedback will help guide future episodes, and I love hearing from you. Also, please share this podcast with anyone who you think may be interested or who may get something from what I have shared. Until the next time we connect, take care of yourself and take a step.